we'll rock and roll. But I'll do a little corny intro here for you guys. So once again,
Corny intro.
Yes, the corny intro. That's the official title of this segment, Douglas. But very pleased to be here on another episode of The Next Rep, and we are pleased to be joined by two gentlemen from HYROX HQ. We're here with Douglas Gremmen and David Magida. So first off, did I say both of your names correctly? Because we dry run this.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, yes.
Very good. Very good. I think it doesn't matter what your last name is. Someone will find a way to mispronounce it. Like, your last name could be Smith, and you're going to get Smythe a couple of times in your life. So there's just no way of avoiding it. Except
everybody panics. Yeah, everybody panics with my first name, so they don't even get to the last name.
It's weird. Everybody calls me Greg as my first name. I'm like, I'm Douglas Gremmen, so why would you call me Greg as my first name? But it's always the name that pops up, and people just randomly call me by Greg. I'm like, okay, makes no sense.
Oh,
but
that's so funny. I get Reganne and Reganne.
Yeah, I could see Reganne or Reganne.
Yeah. I
thought
it all.
It was Reganne when I first met you, Regan. When it was like, hey, welcome to new employee at Wodify, Reganne Day. But
And I get Magida, everything except Magida, as it's supposed to be.
All right, well, I'm glad I got it on the first try. But
nailed it, yeah.
Thanks to the both of you for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time. And just wanted to kind of start off. Yeah, obviously, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are administrators, coaches, staff members, or owners of fitness businesses. And there's no larger, dare I say, I don't mean this as a derogatory, but the trend right now of HYROX. You guys are exploding in popularity. There's hotspots all throughout the United States and I'm sure abroad. Of just like, I live in Austin, Texas, where a lot of gyms that used to offer services like functional fitness and CrossFit are now expanding their offerings to include HYROX. So for those folks who are just kind of getting acclimated to this or just hearing about it the first time, what do you guys do at HYROX HQ? How did you kind of discover this new phenomenon?
Let me just start by saying that it's music to my ears when you say expanding. You know what they're doing, because that's exactly how we see it. Douglas, I'm going to let you start things off.
No, you start. You're always much better at the real story because.
What do we do? Well, Douglas has been with the company much longer than me. I came in as an athlete originally, but I will tell you that since 2021, when I became involved in this sphere and saw immediately the value that it would bring to my gym, my training, my lifestyle, what HYROX has really achieved is to create a sport and an event that is really for everyone. And it's the kind of thing where, when we say for everyone, I mean like the highest level athletes can find something that is worth doing again and again, in much the same way as Reganne's about to run a marathon, right? And you see how many people have run marathons over and over. In that same vein, while giving people all the way down to absolute beginners the same opportunity to train for something over and over, to benchmark themselves against it, to get better, to give them a purpose behind their training. I think that's the biggest thing, but It has spawned not just a sport, but a training methodology or a series of training methodologies, because no one, I think, has fully cracked the code on what is the perfect HYROX training, and that's, I think, one of the most beautiful things about it. And it has given, I think, new life to a lot of gyms that maybe were sputtering and looking for what could they do to add and expand to their service offerings and draw in new people, reinvigorate the people that have already been there, rebuild culture and community. But essentially, for those who don't know, the race are the world's largest indoor fitness races, mass participation fitness races, and we are 8 rounds of a 1,000-meter run, each one followed by a fitness station, all stations that are fairly familiar to the people who will be listening to this podcast. So 1,000-meter skier, 50-meter sled push, 50-meter sled pull, 80-meter burpee broad jump, 1,000-meter row, 200-meter kettlebell farmer's carry, 100-meter sandbag lunge, and 100 wall balls. And what we've tried to do is create a standardization globally for these races that we have in over 100 locations around the world and growing, but also make it where the experience goes beyond just the race itself. It's a top to bottom full weekend experience where you're almost walking into a music festival, but it's for fitness. And the production values are high, the energy is high, and along with that, we now have an affiliation program an education program for level 1 certification or foundational certification, soon to be level 2, and group X certifications, and on it goes. Experiences and camps and other things soon to come. And it's just another, I mean, I said, a rising tide lifts all ships. It's just another way that gyms can really just latch onto something amazing and give it to their people and grow with it.
So what do you do, David?
And I own a gym, by the way, outside of being global head of training and fitness for HYROX. I own a gym in Washington, D.C. called Elevate. And within 2 weeks of running my first HYROX, I launched... Oh, cool. I launched...
completely unintentional, by the way. This is a roofing company. So.
But within 2 weeks of running my first race, we had launched a HYROX program at my gym, and I watched it blossom from... no one knew what HYROX was, 2021. I had 4 people, then I had 8, then I had 16, then I had 150 run the DC HYROX race. And it became this thing that provided life and energy and culture and community to a gym that was really struggling with it around COVID times. And it really saved my business. And I think that's always generally where I start the story is like, I don't know if my gym would still be in business and if I would still have wanted to keep at it with the frustrating levels of where everything was post-COVID, if it wasn't for HYROX. And it's now at a point where over a third of the members who go to my gym go for HYROX as their primary reason.
Wow. What was your primary offering prior to?
We were a boutique training studio. We had HIIT classes, we had strength training programs, we had endurance training programs, and we were looking for what was that something else. We've since launched, we have our HYROX hybrid athlete training program. We have a power program too, which is like a barbell program. People that generally what's been interesting is the people that fit into our HYROX program, they're now branching out and doing our power program too, because they'll assess and go, oh, the thing that I was lacking was strength. I need to do 8 weeks of strength training, and they'll go and really focus on that. And then people that are doing the power work will go, man, they run a HYROX, and they go, my running is not where it needs to be. And the next thing you know, they're doing the running classes. So what's been cool is to see how it's spurned people to try things they weren't doing before to get better.
It's awesome. Thank you, David. Appreciate the background. Douglas, tell us about your journey and how'd you discover HYROX and what do you do there now that you're...
Almost similar to David. I would say I came in as an athlete, but I wouldn't say at the same level of mortality as David said. I was literally one of the first athletes to ever participate in a HYROX training back in 2017. Knew the owner, knew the founder, worked together with him in previous triathlon businesses. Hey, Douglas, come and check out this workout. And I thought I was pretty fit at the time and jumped into a local gym activation. At the time it was a PFT, so a physical fitness test. And we kind of started the whole HYROX journey back in probably August 2017 to get ready for a race. In November, didn't know what a ski erg was, didn't know what sled push was, didn't know what a wall ball was. So the way David explains it now, assuming that we all knew those things back in 2017, but I remember getting coaching tips about 5 minutes prior to my race start on how to best pull the rower and how to best and be efficient on the ski erg. So that was my first race experience with 500 other crazy Europeans giving it a go. And the format, funnily enough, hasn't changed since 2017. So I must admit, Christian and Mo founded the company and pretty much originated the idea in 2015 and then did the first trial in 2017 with us 500 people. Hasn't really changed from a sports concept since that first day. And I joined in 2019 to pretty much lead the international expansion outside of Germany. So launched it in the Netherlands, then launched it in the UK where it became very successful. Then took over the reins in the US in 2022 and kind of had to reinvent the wheel a little bit post-COVID and also really work on the positioning of HYROX next to CrossFit. Obviously, the US was a strong CrossFit market and we were seen a little bit as CrossFit's little brother, and it was really our take to position this as a mass participation sport. And then last year, after the US kind of consolidated and we kind of reached a sustainable level of growth, I was kind of tasked to help David run the whole global gym business, which it is today with almost 11,000 affiliate gyms around the world. So take full responsibility for that and some other really cool new revenue opportunities like cruises, sponsorships. We're potentially launching other great initiatives that empower gyms to also make more revenues moving forward.
I love how you guys kind of came at it from initially being involved on the athletic side and then getting involved in the operations and the management side. Douglas, you had mentioned CrossFit. the elephant in the room for our customers, a lot of our customers are CrossFit gyms. And I'm sure you guys, as you've grown and expanded across the globe, have studied the rise of CrossFit and sort of their life cycle, as it were, as a fitness sort of phenomenon. As you've looked into that history, are there any successes or even mistakes that you took away from studying that journey that you guys think you can perhaps avoid? What did you learn from that study?
I think generally right, and I think it's mostly the positives on what CrossFit has achieved since its inception, probably in the late 2000s, and critical growth into probably its peak in 2015, 2016. We've got to say that CrossFit is probably the biggest fitness brand in the world with, at the time, probably 12, 13,000 affiliates. I mean, there's not anybody that's done anything like that at that size and scope, right? To really bring what we call a bit of a niche sport, because it is powerlifting, it is gymnastics, it is pretty technical movements into pretty much mainstream fitness, was pretty phenomenal, and it changed the direction of general fitness and how people train and what they train for. And most importantly, it created community, right? It created that third space club identity, which I'm used to from my tennis days or from my golf days, where I go to my local tennis club or golf club and create friendships. I think all those components were illustrative of how fitness became a sport through CrossFit. So I think we very much elaborated on the notion that fitness can be a sport to the extent that people go to their favorite social club and engage with friends and engage with coaches and meet new people along the way. And I think as we grew, we realized that HYROX has that same ability, just targeting a little bit of a broader and a wider audience, because we believe that those communities should not only be formed in CrossFit boxes, they could also be formed in a Planet Fitness or an F45 or a Gold's Gym, where people have different means, different aspirations, different physical abilities as well. And we believe that the sport of fitness is not only in a certain box with 150 to 200 members, but that this sport could live all across, and it could be a marathon runner that wants to get into strength training, or it could be a guy that loves strength training that wants to get more into running, and we kind of meet them at the halfway house. David, I'm not sure, you obviously owning a functional training gym and having the choice to go the CrossFit route or not, what you've taken out of it from operating a gym.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Douglas hit on a lot of the things that I was going to say. Like, I think if you were to ask me what is the thing that CrossFit has done best, it is community. And I would say that that's followed up by being able to scale complex skills and teach them to the masses. The lesson that I think we've learned from CrossFit has been trying to be slightly less exclusive, because I think sometimes it feels like CrossFit can lose sight of the average consumer, because they generally get that top 10% of consumer, and they get those other people too, but they're generally drawing mostly from that person who is capable of doing barbell overhead squats and snatches and muscle ups and things like that, or they're trying to get to that point. And our program as a methodology, our race overall is one of our objectives is to have a lower skill barrier to entry, and then allow people to really grow within it. So that's been one of our big learnings. And we're also, what we're targeting is like, we fit in very nicely with a CrossFit box, like, because you have a lot of the equipment already, you have a training protocol in place, you could sub in like a HYROX Sundays or something along those lines and make it very easy to integrate it into your program for those who want, and therefore open up your prospecting to a wider audience, retain your members by having the ability to just give them something unique to train for, because a lot of times you're in gym competitions, or you're one event a year where you go and do an event outside against other gyms is not necessarily enough for them, or they don't feel like they're good enough to do that event. And so the inclusiveness was the thing that we really wanted to expand upon, I think, as, like, to me, one of the most primary objectives.
But I think maybe that's something to jump in on the inclusiveness. When we looked at the overall fitness and sports landscape, we probably emulated and copied more the running world, and going, hey, there's hundreds of millions of people running around the pond or in the park, and then they started engaging in 5Ks and 10Ks, and before we know it, we have 50, 60,000 people competing in marathons. How did that happen over the last 40, 50, 60 years? And running is still on a massive high, and nobody's calling marathon running a fad. It's unbelievable to see, and I'm super proud to say that this week we have 25,000 people racing in Birmingham, and we have 43,000 people racing in London in early December, which is getting very close up to the top 6 marathon majors in the world in terms of participation, right? So we're very much following that trend that fitness is a global mass participation sport, probably the biggest organized sport in the world, with hundreds of millions of members, somewhere a member of a box, of a gym, in a corporate location, in a hotel gym, etc. People are training the sport of fitness. So we're just giving it meaning and context by putting a sport or a competition on top of it that people could train for, similar to what marathon has done to running.
Go ahead, Regan.
Yeah, I think my CrossFit friends, and just to out myself as a 13-year CrossFitter, would be mad if I didn't speak up a little bit about the inclusivity of CrossFit. I think what I'm really picking up from what you're saying, David, is it isn't branded as inclusive. Like they really like lean into that and are starting to lean into that again, just as a brand. But as you walk into a CrossFit gym, they are very inclusive. They are very... Totally. You might have that 1% within the business, but the average person is still your average person in the gym. And I think that's what's interesting about HYROX is like racing is you guys are leaning into, from a brand perspective, this race is for everybody, where CrossFit did the opposite from a brand perspective, which is like, we're going to find the fittest on earth. You can all compete in the open, but the ultimate goal is to find the fittest on earth.
Yeah, and I do want to make sure that my comments aren't misconstrued as in as taking a shot at CrossFit, because that's not at all what I was trying to do. It's more so like when you ask an average person on the street, like, do you do CrossFit? If they don't do it, why do you not do it? They're going to tell you. That is terrifying to me. Like that is like what the average person will say. They're like, that is so scary. And I think we wanted to take that barrier to entry away.
No, and also focus on core natural movements, right? And I think that's some of the kind of the foundational element of trying to be as healthy a sport as possible, that we're working on movements that are low in skill, low in intensity, and subsequently are healthy to execute when you're training at moderate to high intensity for a longer period of time. And therefore talk about injury prevention a lot. And obviously, no matter what top sport you're doing, sport tends to be a little bit one-dimensional, whether it's too much tennis, too much swimming, too much CrossFit. However, we do believe that with HYROX, at least we've kind of hit the well-balanced nature of strength endurance as a whole, and not pounding the pavement for hundreds of miles a week, nor pounding the weights for hundreds and hundreds of reps a week. So in that sense, it's a safe middle ground of doing natural movement exercises at a relatively modest intensity.
As Douglas mentioned before, we did have this idea of like, we did gear towards the runners a little bit more. We are an endurance sport. And that is one of the most, I think, dramatic differences when you look at the two side by side, is that people often lose sight, and you'll see little memes, people making fun of HYROX weight or things like that. But the reality is, like, we are taking runners and making them a lot stronger. And we're taking people who are strong and making them much better runners. And so just the type of athleticism and the type of training required is slightly different. And it's not necessarily saying, oh, this is better, this is worse, etc. It's just a lot of people are on that endurance journey, and it's giving them something that doesn't skew them too far to that side.
Yeah, and it's why I think so many CrossFit gyms 5 years ago were adding boot camp classes as an offering, because they wanted that way to get the person who's interested in dabbling in a little bit of strength without feeling like they're going to have to get into snatches and high skill gymnastics movements. It kind of gets their feet wet, and then maybe they look over the fence and they're interested in learning those higher skill movements. But I think that's what HYROX is kind of doing really well, which is it's leaning into where people are comfortable and then getting them interested in that other element, whether it's strength or endurance.
But what I think is, and I think that's a really good reflection that you make, Regan, on the bootcamp. For CrossFit boxes, it wasn't really great to market themselves as having a great bootcamp offering, and therefore they would kind of hide that a little bit, and people didn't really have a meaning with bootcamp. And now by pretty much substituting the bootcamp class for a HYROX class allows them another marketing window to attract without deteriorating from what the CrossFit DNA is, or kind of like, that core really strong DNA that I think has been grounded for 15, 20 years, which is phenomenal. But they were a little bit submissive of the boot camp or the endurance X or however you call that specific class. And now with HYROX, like, hey, it's cool what's happening. It can attract a certain audience. And we love the potential to get people through the door to then go to specific CrossFit classes. So I think we are, and I think as Chris Hinshaw once said, I think HYROX is helping attract new people into CrossFit boxes. It's also helping keep people inside CrossFit boxes. Mm-hmm. And this is only good for everybody. It's good for us. It's good for the CrossFit box owner. And the economics around the HYROX classes, as David could probably allude to, you could probably get 30 people inside a CrossFit box doing a HYROX class versus 10 to 12 people doing a traditional WOD of the day. So I think the economics around getting 30 people into a classroom are very beneficial to a CrossFit box at this moment in time when people are challenging sometimes the economics of operating a CrossFit box.
And I think on top of that, what's been interesting to note is initially I think there was a lot of resistance within the industry to get involved with HYROX training, putting on people's calendars, and now it feels like everyone I know that's in a box somewhere is like, oh, we're training for this race. And I think there was a tipping point, and it occurred when you started to see some of the top games athletes start to get involved, and you saw Matt Frazier and you saw Tia Toomey. I mean, they've leaned in completely, and now we've seen Chandler Smith and Noah Olson and James Sprague and Justin Medeiros, and the list just goes, the Wells sisters, and the list just goes on and on and on. And I think that really that signaled a shift where people were saying, wait a minute, like there's something to this. And the business savvy coaches and box owners, they saw it early. I spotted it at my first race. I was like, this is it. This is that thing that my people needed. And it's been fun to see that really catch fire.
I think people are scared of it. They're still a little scared of it that offer CrossFit. And I think I'd be so interested to hear how you guys would speak to those people that are scared of adding it into their current offerings. They're fearful it's going to water down their current product or distract from it. But I think you guys would have good insight there.
For your people, if you have a box, right, you don't really, people don't all want to be training for the same thing, and they really shouldn't be from the standpoint of people have different archetypes, different strengths, different weaknesses. You want to give them different focus points, but you also want to give them something real to train for. So first and foremost, it never hurts to have something on the calendar, burning a hole through it, giving them a little something extra to train harder, to come in on the days they wanted to sleep in, etc. But then I think on top of that, what's really important is that we are not a competing product. It's complementary in every way. The entire objective here is to be an additional resource that's going to bring new people in your door, that's going to give your current people something fun to train for, and something that's going to be also improving on your community because it's a team building thing, because now you can send a team of 50 people to a race with uniforms. They're going to want to do a team briefing the night before and a team dinner. They're going to want to gather for group photos. They're going to go and maybe they're flying somewhere and they're going to share hotels and rental cars and pile 25 people onto an airplane on the same flight, and like on and on. It makes your community even tighter. And so when I look at the question of whether or not it's something to be afraid of, there's nothing to fear aside from this irrational idea that somehow it's going to hurt your CrossFit program. But really all it's doing is helping you retain people, because every time they sign up for a race, they're going to need to train with you for another 6 months.
Yep. And I don't think anybody freaks out when their group signs up for a Ragnar, like
No.
a marathon, So I think you're exactly right.
But I also think that the perspective of CrossFit HQ has changed a little bit on the sport. And I think by them coming out and saying, hey, let us be the best place to train for HYROX, and really go out there and saying, hey, CrossFit is the best foundation you could have to become a great HYROXer or a competitive HYROXer or be the best version of yourself. And I think that statement has made a big difference in how CrossFit looks at the sport of HYROX, and subsequently using the CrossFit training methodology to get their athletes ready for the sport of HYROX to that extent. So I think in that sense, as David said, it's truly complementary. And if you focus on your core strength, and CrossFit should focus on their core strength and capabilities, they're in a very strong position to add a lot of new members and followers to the CrossFit brand on the back of the tidal wave that we're presently riding, similar to what maybe CrossFit had in the early 2010s, etc.
And if you were to ask me, like, hey, how do I take my CrossFit box, like my training, and apply what HYROX is doing, give a HYROX program or series of programs to complement it? I would tell you that the simplest, fastest way to do it would be to add a HYROX class once or twice a week. Maybe it's Saturdays or Sundays. You could get these really large groups. You can you'd be able to add activations like events and challenges and competition stuff on top of workouts. And then I would see if I could start a run club out of my gym, have a track workouts, and have like an easy run, and encourage people to start doing that, because I mean, you're really underselling their opportunity to get better if you're not having them run a little bit for a race that has 5 miles of running. But if you were to incorporate those three things, you immediately would complement your program without eating into it at all. Your members are still paying their dues to be members with you. You're just giving them a little bit more direction. And then you can still guide them and say, you're doing these workouts XYZ over the course of the week. This is your run workout. This is your HYROX workout. Away we go.
I feel like there's a certain markets where HYROX is just like, I live in Austin, where every gym has HYROX offerings. Yes. I'm sure you guys have data behind this, but I would be surprised if Austin wasn't the number one city for HYROX in the United States. I mean, it is just absolutely everywhere here. And for a meathead like me, it's tough because nobody wants to come lift weights with me anymore. Everybody's going to HYROX class. I'm all alone at Gold's by myself, just, sadly benching away lonesome. But anyhow, let's say you're in a different market where HYROX hasn't really permeated yet, and you're interested, I'm a gym owner, I want to capitalize on this trend, but it hasn't reached me yet, but I want to be an early adopter. Mm-hmm. Are there certain ingredients I should look for my membership base, or just, I guess, just some hints that maybe this would be a great candidate, a great gym to add this offering to my menu?
I mean, I think the first question is ask yourself, like, what is it that your current members are training for? Is it something? Are they interested in races? Are they interested in competitions? Are you hosting events at your gym already, and that's having a great turnout? Like, what are they doing with their fitness other than being fit and looking good naked? Like, are you actually training for them for something? If so, it'd be very easy to test this by doing some kind of in-gym challenge. You don't call it HYROX, but you create something, see what the response is to that sort of thing. But really, and it's seeing, if you've added ski ergs, are people excited about that? If you have sleds, do people like training sleds during the workouts? Like, I think it really just starts as simple as that. Start by understanding your audience. And then secondarily, what a great opportunity. If you are the first in your market to be launching a HYROX gym, you get to corner the market.
And it also starts a little bit with passionate coaches and trainers inside those gyms that have probably already picked it up somewhere, have gone and raced and kind of transmitted that bug onto their members. And I definitely think that executing HYROX programming without that coach that is passionate about it is probably a little bit of an uphill battle, right? And I think it's just been interesting to see how a lot of the growth has been driven, as David Magida was the perfect example, right? Gym owner, head coach, elite athlete, go out there and race, and then transmitting that, hey, Douglas, you could go and do that. You could go do that. Hey, Susan, why don't you pair up with Sandy and you guys can do a doubles together? And all of a sudden you're starting to grow this quite organically. And it's probably one of the reasons why it took quite long in the US to take off, because apparently the US is a very big country. So that when we were doing something in LA, David would be convincing 2 people to go, and we would have to wait another year for he convinces 2 more people to go and do it. And then 2 turns into 4, turns into 8, turns into 150, and it took about 3 to 4 years. Whereas in Europe, because of the volume of events that we have, the accelerator was much quicker. So 5 people influenced 20, 20 influenced 100, and before we know it, we had 20,000 people at events. We've now hit that critical mass in the US as well, where all of a sudden 5,000 people events are turning into 15,000 people events, which means that the same thing is happening in boxes. Like, people are traveling, there's the one-off member, the 2 members that have gone and done the doubles, and I think that's really what's been the snowball effect. And gyms will very quickly know if it is for their community, and if not, start small, as David said, right? Start with 2, 3 people and get the ball rolling and inspire others to follow suit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Douglas mentioned something that I thought was really unique when I first started racing in 2021, 2022, which was something, I don't know the exact statistic. I want to say it was somewhere around 40% of the participants were actually fitness professionals back then. And so it was like this massive number. It was like almost everybody that went to the races was people that like literally worked in fitness. And then they got so excited about it. They all went home and did exactly what I did, launched a HYROX program. And it really was like for me going into my gym and being like, have you heard of this? No. Oh, well, I think you'd love this. Then I have to describe what it was. And then once you could convince one person to sign up, you could get their entire friend circle to sign up. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, all of a sudden I just got 8 new people into this program just because I convinced one person. So for me, it was really identifying people that I thought it would be a great fit for and personally convincing them. And then once I hit a critical mass, it was like wildfire.
Yeah, so many people get into fitness for the aesthetics, like Cory's always calling out. And I think there's nothing better than doing fitness for a purpose, like a training block you have coming up or a race, like to have purpose and something you're working towards. And the day when that's going to happen and you're going to show up and all of your hard work is going to, you know, kind of be out there for you to really get that real test. I think it's so fun. And to find those people that need that little motivator throughout the year that keeps them focused is really cool.
Yeah, but so interesting, right? There's no other sport in the world where aesthetics was the primary motivator, right? Nobody plays tennis or goes and plays basketball because they want to look good. So the whole notion that fitness as a sport wasn't really there until CrossFit came along to a certain extent, and now HYROX has come along, and it makes complete sense. You don't go and do HYROX because you want to look good. It's a nice by-effect of training hard, lifting and running, and I think that's been the mindset change of being an event concept or a fitness and turning it really into a sport with where community and purpose-driven events is really at the heart of everything. And that's been the fundamental shift even at Gold's Gym, Cory. And I think it's been interesting to see that Gold's Gym is probably going to be one of the earlier adopters at mass market level. We're saying, hey, we think that HYROX fits well at Gold's Gym in Austin. Why? Because there is a community there. They want to have a little bit more that's top sports mentality, and they want to bring that box philosophy more into a big box gym. And I think that's really where the sport is going to grow so significantly once we start tapping into 5,000 to 10,000 member gyms.
And to circle back, Cory, to your point from before, which was about gym owner who's like a little bit hesitant to dive into this. The other point of view is the number of people that have walked into my gym to join because they heard we had a HYROX program and a good one because their gym didn't, and they jumped and switched gyms just because their gym didn't have one. Like just having one can save you that mass flood of people out.
Yeah, that's 2012 CrossFit people. I was just having CrossFit on your door would get people to walk in, and if they're not seeing this opportunity here with the interest in their community, I think it's a big miss.
But I think the beauty around it is, and that's I think the fundamental business difference between the CrossFit affiliation at the time, which meant you had to build a box and buy all the equipment, that obviously a HYROX affiliation goes on top of already hopefully a successful business model, right? You already have the equipment, you have the location, you're paying the rent, you have the coaches, and you can add HYROX really as an incremental value add to your business, which means that the risk is also significantly less, and therefore it's also much easier to measure the return on investment by the number of people that are walking through your door, by the mini events that you're organizing, and all of a sudden your $1,500 investment a year is turning into $100,000, $150,000 business opportunity without significant risk, because you're not building a $500,000 HYROX box. You already have the equipment, you have the endurance, you can run around the block. So there's so much to do, and I think it's great that we're able to offer gyms something at a minimal risk with a high service level. And I think that's very important in this day and age when apparently it's not that easy to run a gym, whether it's David's gym or a CrossFit box or a big box gym. It's not a given that you're going to be profitable. So I think it's up to us to really give gym owners and coaches the tools to at least be able to generate incremental revenues.
Costs are high, labor is high, marketing, it's like if you have your one gym, you're trying to market your one gym. Like that's such a challenge. You're not a professional marketer, you run a gym. And so you have all of these different pain points along the way. And yeah, it costs a little bit of money to be an affiliate with HYROX. You know, what you're getting is brand rights. You get workouts, you get challenges, you get early access on registration. You get all kinds of cool little perks that come along with it. But in the grand scheme of it, the way I've always looked at it is the moment I get one member, not one member a month, one member to sign up who comes in the door, I've already paid for affiliation for the entire year.
And what kind of support do your affiliates get, HYROX affiliates?
I think that's been obviously the key learning, right? We turned from a license model where, hey, there's a brand name, you can use it, you can early access to ticketing, to really building software solutions and digital solutions that allow gyms to operate HYROX far more efficiently. However, then came the challenge. How do I service Gold's Gym in the same way that I service an F45, in the same way that I service a CrossFit box, knowing that they all have different means, they all have different equipment, they all have different coaching structures, they all have different infrastructure. So we really had to build a suite of technology and a bespoke performance hub, which David can speak to a little bit on what we're offering and how this is gone now today into beta testing as well. But it's been such a fun exercise, and obviously that's when we brought David on board full-time almost 18 months ago, when we had, I think, 1,100 partner gyms, and pretty much tenfolded that where we are today, is building out a suite of services that everybody can use. And David, more than happy for you to kind of share what that kind of host of services and content is.
Yeah, we have, first and foremost, group training is kind of the heart of what we do. I think that that's the heart of what a lot of these gyms have, not all of them, but it's also, I think, the driver of people who end up going and racing HYROX. And so we do offer within our performance hub, which is essentially like a web portal that people can log into and access workouts. We've been offering 8 workouts a week. We're adjusting that to 7 workouts a week, but it's 4 different class formats where people can go in, get their workout of the week for each of these formats, or 2 for each format. We've got an archive of over 500 workouts in there. So some may fit your gym, some may not fit your gym, and that's okay because there's just so many. But on top of that, it's challenges and instructions for how to run them and events. We'll be rolling out new fitness testing protocols and new challenges shortly. The workouts are displayed on a digital whiteboard, so you could cast it onto a screen, so you don't even have to write it on a board anymore. You could just select the one you want, substitute any exercises that you need to make substitutions for, and hit cast, and it's up on a screen. That's available in 11 languages. So if you want
full video support.
With full video support. So loop videos to, if you don't know the name of a movement, as we've called it, because you know how in fitness everyone has different words for everything, different terminology. Click it, you get movement description and cues, you get a loop video. Soon that loop video will be available to actually cast on the screens as well. So like we're working on those solutions. Everything is constantly this evolving thing, but we've leaned heavily into our tech stack to be able to like really provide something that gyms can utilize. And then on top of this, we are beta testing right now our own workout builder, where essentially gyms are going to be able to log in and they can either take one of our workouts and then completely modify it. They could take a template of one of ours and write in what they want to write in for the workout. And it displays just like all of our workouts do on the whiteboard. There'll be a built-in timer function in it and everything. And then eventually the loop video support there as well. But we're just trying to streamline ways for gyms to be able to present their programming better, to be able to take some of the weight off their shoulders. And eventually people will have access to online self-guided training programs, virtual classes, all kinds of other things as well. So like our suite of offerings was in one place. We're continuing to add, and that will continue to be the case. Everything that we've done has been like, learn, what do gyms need next? Oh, we've got a request for this. Okay, well, let's build a solution for it. On and on and on. That's gone for the last year and a half.
What about coach training too? You guys mentioned.
Yeah, and education. So one of the keys, right, that CrossFit really got right was certification and getting people to get their level 1 or getting them to get their level 2 and how they did it. Scalability of that is always such a complicated thing, but we have our HYROX Academy where every single person can go and get a HYROX Foundations course to learn generally how the race functions, how to teach all the zones, and we can create a level of consistency across that. The Foundations course is free. Then we have a level 1 course. Level 1 is an opportunity to go a lot more into the sports science. So you can become a HYROX performance coach by getting your level 1 certification. And you can learn from experts. I think Chris Hinshaw is like one of the people that is an expert on aerobic capacity within this course. But you can get expertise on lactic threshold and endurance training, but also applicable strength training, and on and on and on. And it's just another way that people can really upskill their coaches and get them to a point where they can represent your brand with authority and credibility when they're talking about HYROX.
What you were saying?
Two things. Obviously, on the Performance Hub and some of the programming that we're writing for us, it's really important that these are readily available, and that's why we're also in a pilot testing phase with a company called Wodify, who I guess you guys know a little bit of. But
I've heard of
no,
it.
for us, it's all about creating open access, right, and lowering that barrier to entry so that gyms can use whatever systems they have in place in order to deliver these workouts at the biggest ease possible. And I think it's so important that we have the technology partners in place that can build the bridge to Wodify, so that HYROX partner gyms on the Wodify platform can literally import existing HYROX workouts and run the business as they're used to running. And I think that's so important. And we're constantly thinking about that end user journey, and how is the gym owner looking at it? How is he empowering his coaches to adopt these programs? How is he coaching the coach that needs to coach with the right movement standards? So all of it is kind of thought about from a delivery point of view for the gym owner to make it as easy as possible to get this into his class structure, because the last thing we want to be is another technology, another app, another pain in the ass hardware solution. Like, let it be as easy as possible. No matter what solution you have, we'll try to get it to you in the most effective format. And therefore, I'm also excited about the potential partnership with Wodify in getting your thousands and thousands of gyms easier access to our programming.
Yeah, we're super excited to see that come to fruition. David, on the topic of programming, we're talking about workouts. I was curious to pick your brain here. It's an interesting thing to prep for HYROX, right? A HYROX race, because it has this high degree of specificity. And specificity is great for assessment, but it makes your job hard as a programmer, right? Because obviously we can't hammer these movements too often, risk of overuse injuries or just frankly boredom with a program, right? But I would equate it almost to preparing for like the NFL Combine. Like, here are the tests. We know the tests, but we're going to do a variety of things to prepare for these tests. We're not just going to hit our head against the wall doing these over and over again. So how do you approach that from a programming perspective, knowing that you're preparing for a specific event, but not being too specific with the preparation so that you can still have enjoyable workouts for those following along?
Look, I think there are certain base things that not in every workout, but they're in a lot of workouts. You're going to run in a lot of workouts. You're going to row in a lot of workouts, etc. Right? People ask me like, well, if I had to do like 3 things, what are those like 3 things that are going to make me better? And I'd be like, running, lunging, and probably like erging. But the reality is, like, when you look at a lunge, a good coach is going to deconstruct that a little bit more and be like, okay, what are the things that are going to make my lunging better? Like box step-ups, split squats, Bulgarian split squats, deficit split squats. It's like, okay, these are all different. They're all the same, but they're all different. There's variety in that. Loading with a bar or a sandbag or dumbbells or high rep body weight or, we're in the process of starting to kind of shift towards a little bit more progressive with our programming. And so again, it's like, okay, you might be repeating some of the same elements or rep schemes or whatever it might be, but you're doing it in a way where there's growth. And I think growth leads to progress. And if you look at the way CrossFit programs, like a lot of that programming is repetitive. You're like, okay, I guess I'm doing my 5x5s today. And it isn't boring. But I also think it's important that, like, we have to teach people, right? As coaches, you're supposed to be teaching people to embrace the process. And the process isn't always like what's like sexy and fun and exciting. And a lot of times the most boring workouts are the most effective workouts. And so can you walk that fine line of like not boring them out of the room, but also giving them what they need to actually get better, even if it's maybe not what they want to do, but what they need to do?
But I think generally also, and I think that's where you've done a great job, David. Sorry to kind of blow your trumpet a little bit, but to create a high variety and timing structures and multiple zones and different timing sequences in different areas so that the room is never flowing in a circuit style training, right? It's never 8 stations, and you do 3 minutes per station and you do that twice and then you come back in a loop. I think generally, and that's where I think the complexity of training has come in. And how do you optimize the room? How do you get as many people training in a as best flow as possible? And I think that's also creating a lot more stickiness because people don't really know what to get. Are they getting 4 minutes of work? Or are they getting 45 seconds of work with 15-second rest? I think it's been great to see a lot of different ways of structuring HYROX workout in a fun, entertaining fashion.
And a lot of gyms are going to take some of the stuff that we program and they're going to use some of it or all of it or none of it. And you know what? That's up to you as the gym owner. Like we are not going to dictate to you what you have to do and how you teach HYROX. You know, we're going to recommend things. But one of the things that I tell people right from the jump is like review the program offerings that we have. And we have like a kind of like a circuit style class that's called foundational. That's for beginners, but it's all skill levels because everything is time modalities. So it's easy to like plug in a super high level athlete with, you know, somebody who's a little bit older, with someone who's pregnant, with somebody who's a beginner, with, you know, whatever it might be. Everyone's able to kind of work at what's their level within those time domains across while they're learning skills, lowering the barrier to entry. Then we have like an all engine building class, right? And so it's, you have those people, you know who they are at your gym who are like super, super strong, but they get winded going up a flight of stairs. And you're like, you need this engine class. And then we have a strength class called power, same idea. You have your people who have amazing aerobic engines, but they need to get stronger. They need to focus on that. And then you have a class called complete, where the idea is that they're doing all of the things that they're gonna feel in HYROX. They're getting a lot of that stimulus, the closest thing they'll get to a race stimulus. You're stringing together longer training blocks, or you're stringing together movements like running into sled push, back to running, or things of that nature where you're going aerobic, anaerobic, back and forth. These are all very different physiological demands on these workouts. They're also different experiences, but it's up to a coach who's running their own program to say, hey, I'm either going to take all of these, one of these, none of these, and I'm going to fit it into what we're doing. And if maybe I have a class that's a great facsimile for one of these, I use my own class for that. And hey, we're just going to introduce the engine program into what we're doing, or the complete class once a week. And so we give you tools, but you still, as head coach or as owner of that business, it's up to you to figure out how to utilize it to your advantage. And maybe you just say, hey, I'm going to use this as inspiration and write my own programs. That's fine too. Like, you're never going to have me, I'm not going to take it personally. My feelings aren't hurt. You know, I think that you need to do what's best for your business. But if you're not incorporating HYROX in some way, you aren't doing what's best for your business.
But that's, I think, why we're now matching the video library to your ability to create your own workouts, which means that you get premium content, you get a premium look and feel, and yet you can still curate your own experience with having the ability to technically deliver this workout almost in an F45 or an Orange Theory style experience, completely, you know, at the touch of a button. I think that's kind of providing CrossFit boxes that have been less prone to use obviously visual displays and visual cues in the past might just change their adoption rate to include more movement standard video based coaching as well, complementary to what the coach already is doing. So we're just trying to think a little bit outside the box and think about what do gyms really need now to deliver best in class training for all abilities and all types of athletes.
Do you guys, while we're on this topic too, frankly, just almost out of personal curiosity as well, because maybe I can go see my friends again. You guys have stolen them all from me. All my workout buddies are doing HYROX. You got to
be careful. Gold's Gym, Austin might be becoming a HYROX box, and then all of a sudden you're on your own in Gold's Gym as well. So.
Oh, no. I'm going to have to switch. No, I'm kidding. I have done a HYROX class, actually. I did it at Correct Fitness here in Austin.
Cool.
So I found out real quick, I don't like sandbag lunges. Those are real brutal. That stood out very quickly. But my question is still kind of on this topic of programming, and I think it's relevant for coaches and for athletes. So from a coaching perspective, I think a lot of coaches might be curious, can this be a complement to their existing program? Yes. Does it work in that capacity as a complement? And also from an athlete's perspective, perhaps my primary sport is jiu-jitsu. Perhaps my primary sport is some variation of, bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever the case may be. But I'm interested in this. I want a social component to my workouts every now and again. Does HYROX slot in pretty well to that sort of complementary training model?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reality is, like, people talk about CrossFit and they're like, you're basically ready for anything. And, I always used to tease my friends who do CrossFit. I'm like, you're ready for anything except going for a run. But the thing is...
running over 800 meters.
Exactly. But I think there's something to that. Like, you have a lot of people that have come into my gym who they belong to a CrossFit box down the street, and they're like, I'm looking for this 1 day a week. So it's super complimentary for them. We have, across the street from my gym, there's a mixed martial arts gym called Beta Academy, and they've got about the same size membership base as we do, but we have their fighters come in all the time to do our workouts once or twice a week because they need the push for some kind of very intense, high endurance focused training. And so it's absolutely one of those things where I say it's complimentary for people like yourself who are into jiu-jitsu. I was a wrestler in high school, and my secret sauce was I would just outlast people. They'd be down like 12 points and then pin them. The endurance is a huge component for your sport as well, and that's the thing, is that one of the things that HYROX really helps you develop is your ability to sustain power output for an extremely long period of time. That's really the demand of the sport at its basic level. And the second is your ability to recover as you transition between elements. Like, the ability for me to bring my heart rate down, compose my breathing, and flush the lactic acid back out of my legs is really the key to HYROX. And so all of those things translate incredibly well if you want to become a better CrossFitter, but also if you want to become a strong power lifter. Being able to have the endurance to add more training volume, or to be able to be strong on that third lift of each of your specific lifts at a competition, or on and on and on. Like, it's just beneficial. And so people often, I think the hardest thing to get people to focus on is their endurance, unless they're into endurance sports, and this gives you a reason to kind of trick them into doing it.
A fun fact, I actually did a bunch of Muay Thai classes at the Beta Academy back in the day, so I probably have walked past your gym. I lived in D.C. for a year. Post-college, I was a fellow on Capitol Hill. I worked in the Senate for a year, so I lived.
You're probably like, I'm not going into a gym with 20 runners. You're probably going like, that's got 20 runners. I'm not going in there.
It's like, where's the golds? Where's the golds? Damn it! But no, I think that's exactly right, because I think that actually is such a great, just from a HYROX perspective, from your perspective, it's a really amazing something that can slide in nicely to that complementary training zone is so valuable, because a lot of these training disciplines, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, all these sorts of things that have been popular strength and fitness sports throughout time, they're very solo endeavors. They're very isolating. The classic bodybuilder is just throwing his headphones on and like going to war with himself for a few hours.
The runners.
Runners.
Mm-hmm. Running, the loneliness of the long distance runner. It's a thing.
Right. 100%. And if they can continue to do that modality, which is their primary passion, but also develop some other skills in a community and once or twice a week, I think that's just a really powerful, that's a great product, frankly, that I think a lot of people are in the market for, including myself.
Well, it's wild. Go to a race, right? And you're running. There are 1,000 spectators that are cheering for you, even though you've never met them before. It's got a little bit of that, like I'm doing a major marathon kind of vibe to it too. So there's a little bit of that community element at the race experience as well, where like you'll be racing against someone on the course, and then afterward you're friends. You're at the finish line and you're friends, and right. That's got a really nice element to it as well.
Douglas, you were saying?
No, I think generally also just the safety around the exercises and the modalities in terms of it complementing other sports and not having, CrossFit tended to give me a lot of shoulder injuries, which isn't great if you're a tennis player and you're having to serve 100 balls the next day, right? So in that sense, we're not doing any major technical movements that could hamper other movements in jiu-jitsu or in golf or in tennis. The only thing that sometimes that I think we're lacking a little bit is rotational movement, and that's something that we're also discussing, how to ensure that rotational movement becomes a bigger part of how we train, which then also is complementary to other rotational sports, etc. But generally, just HYROX training is something that can slot in very much into other technical sports or heavy lifting sports as well.
A question I was excited to ask you guys too. I mean, I would imagine that so I guess a little bit of a two-parter question. We can end on this. First off, I'm curious, with this rapid rise, how has the sort of scope or at least the initial vision changed, or has it? Because I imagine when, Douglas, I know you were personal friends with the founder, like when they created this, I highly doubt they thought they were also creating a sport and a methodology and an event company. There's so many hats that you guys now wear. How much different is that than the initial vision?
I would almost say, look, I think he's bullish enough to say that somewhere in the back of his mind it was his vision, but I think in terms of where we were originally as an events company, we're like, hey, we used to create really good marathons, we used to create really good triathlon, let's go and create a really cool fitness participation for everybody. That was the mindset. Like, we didn't think we were going to change fitness, we didn't think we were going to change the way people train, we didn't think we were going to fight for or have the ambition to be Olympically included in 2032, which is pretty much on the cards right now, right? So I think every 12 months, double growth, triple growth, double growth, and all of a sudden we're 300 people large and have a certain revenue size, and you're like, wow, this is one more double iteration and we're talking potentially about $1 billion company. You're like, I don't think that was ever in the pipelines, and definitely not in the trajectory of 7-8 years with apparently COVID in between, which did hamper our growth and everybody's growth and listening to this podcast at this stage. I think we were pretty much at a standing start in September 2021. We were reflecting on that earlier today. I had 670 people in London exactly 4 years ago, and tomorrow we have 25,000 people in Birmingham. That's 4 years of 600 people motivating, a lot more other people motivating, a lot more other people motivating, and it's almost done without $1 in marketing spent, right? Because it's all being done by people loving the sport and influencing other people to go out there and give it their best.
In April 2022, I flew to London to run the London race. And it was the biggest HYROX that had ever happened. And it was like 4,000 people. And I remember going home and being like, that course was so massive. And now they're doing 43,000.
You said that course was so crowded, I couldn't run a PB, and you were complaining that...
I think I was saying the course was so big. I said you'd run into the row of sleds, and there were so many sleds. It was like sleds as far as the eye could see. And it's just like the idea of like trying to run as fast as you could on a course that felt so much bigger because there was so much more equipment. And now we're talking about a race with 43,000 people. It's truly astounding. But it's funny. I joke with Christian, who's our CEO, is like, you like last year I was saying, you think that we're an events company still, and we are an events company, but we've made the jump to being a fitness company. And then this year you can see again we've made a jump to being like a lifestyle company and a tech company, and it's like we are all of these things, which is what's really I think so crazy about it.
And if we take that same scope, we looked back, now let's look forward with it. What has you guys most excited for the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, obviously just doubling in growth, that jumps out as something to be excited about. But outside of that, is there a next level, a next scope that just really gets you guys fired up when you get out of bed in the morning to continue to, build this vision over the next 5, 10 years? What stands out as most excited about in the future?
Look, I think you got to do your basics. You got to keep doing your basic right? I think there's no doubt about we want to be in the 150 biggest cities in and around the world. We want to be as big in China as we are in the US, as we are in India, right? So we do believe that this could be a truly global phenomenon. It's already amazing to see that fitness is truly global. I think a lot of other sports that you Americans love are apparently not loved in every part of the world, whereas fitness, I think, is one of those things that you go like, hey, it's truly universal. So we truly believe we can get to 3 to 5 million athletes in the next 2 years, which is super, super exciting. But I think generally, and I think that's been the fundamental discussion that we're having, is what is the importance of sport? What is truly a sport? If you're competing in a sport, you want to compete at the highest level, but you want to compete at your local club, and you want to have the possibility to participate in that sport day in, day out. And we really have to build an infrastructure from the Olympics all the way down to your local gym and figure out how people are participating in that sport weekly, monthly, or yearly at that big event. And I think that's something that we're all really excited about, because that's going to be touching, I always say this notion of we want to touch 100 million people, which makes us the third or fourth biggest sport in the world. like, can we do that? Can we achieve that? And what infrastructure do we need to build or facilitate to get people participating in this sport day in, day out? So that's definitely something I'm super excited about. That's a little bit the mission that I have in driving we have in driving the overall gym business and providing those tools to gyms and building potentially other exciting things on top of that. David, I don't know what it means for you as a former elite athlete or what you're seeing that gets you excited.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, to be able to turn around and say, like, look at this sport that I used to be actually pretty good at, and now the level that it has gotten to. Obviously, for me, that gets me really jazzed up. Like, Douglas knows that I have no shortage of thoughts on what I would do to tweak and adjust at the elite level. But the reality is, like, I think he said it best. The first thing that jumped to my mind was what he said, which was that our objective is to touch 100 million lives. And in order to do that, we have to grow in so many different areas, but our goal is to get 90 million of those people are training for HYROX, even if they're not actually running one, right? It's to get people to embrace the methodology and the style and to grow our gym network, but then also at the same time, and we haven't touched on at all, which is not really what I'm specifically working on, is that as this sport grows more and more, one of the directions that it's going to grow is younger and younger. And so we start talking about collegiate programs, high school programs, youth programs, and like on and on and on. That's a whole nother direction for us that we don't need to go into right now, but it is something that gets me very excited to think about, like, what the long-term potential is for this sport.
Love that. Well, guys, I lied to you. There is one more question, perhaps the most important question. A little context first. My friend recently ran a race. I think it was the one in Houston or Dallas last year, or Houston. Which one was in Texas last year? Was it Dallas or Houston?
Both cities. Both. Yeah.
I think it was Dallas. And she posted a reel. Reagan, that's what those are called, right? Reels on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Okay. And she had a soundtrack to the reel, and it sounded like a HYROX theme song. Is it true that you guys have a theme song? I need to know.
If I know that, I'm not allowed to say, but no, I'm just joking. I think the sound that we're going for is the Chicago Bulls sound, literally when our new waves are starting out, and that's something that is very much recurring every time that mixed doubles go out and men's doubles go out and men's pro go out. So it's a little bit of the sound that is iconic with the race, but we haven't yet developed our own unique sound. And as a big fan of Champions League European football, where you have that little tune going off before Liverpool plays Barcelona, like, that would definitely be the next level. But I'm not part of the marketing department anymore, so let's see what they have up their sleeve.
I've talked to, like, our event DJs, and they talk about how, like, I curate playlists specifically that do ebb and flow at certain times during the course of the day, so everyone has this amazing, like, musical experience to go with their race experience, and they do that for the Elite 15 races very specifically. But the only thing I can speak to that you're referring to is I have seen, like, I've seen a reel that also had some kind of HYROX song in the background, but I think some cheeky guy may have just put that into some AI music creator, that we had nothing to do with that as far as I know.
Okay.
So the question back to you guys is, when are you guys going to do a mixed doubles?
We stitched this episode with Cory and I just dying at a HYROX. I got to finish this marathon. And Cory's got to stop bodybuilding.
Like you all, your team is probably not, like, the most symbiotic team, because you need to be able to run approximately the same speed. So maybe, Cory, you pick a meathead bro to go do it with you, and Regan, you pick somebody who can run with you.
So what you're saying, David, is I'm too fast for Cory, probably.
Correct. That is exactly.
I will readily admit to that.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'll take it.
That's entirely the case. Definitely too fast. Well, David, Douglas, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you guys here today. We're super excited to learn more about HYROX. We know our audience is super interested in the sport, in the events, in the whole trend and movement, really. So it's been a pleasure to hear about the origin, where it's going moving forward. Where can folks go to learn more? Maybe just seeing if there's a race coming up in their local market. Is that a great way to kind of dip their toe in?
No, totally. HYROX.com, obviously website, but I think Instagram is our biggest driver. So HYROX World or HYROX America. And for all your coaches and gym owners out there, we've kind of dedicated our own channel to HYROX 365, which has now become a little bit of our B2B channel for everything that's around coaching, education, programming, affiliation, etc. So HYROX America, definitely the best place for Instagram, and then HYROX 365 as a separate channel.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time today, guys. Thanks so much for being here. We're excited to continue to work together, and I hope you guys keep crushing it, man. It's
cool.
inspiring.
And
to
good
see.
luck with your marathon. That's exciting.
Thank
My wife's
you.
doing New York next week as well, so I feel the pain.
Yes, good luck to her. I hope she has a blast.
Cool.
HYROX
Thank
next.
See you guys at Gold's Gym Austin, 2026.
You will be going through them.
We'll see you guys there. Take care.
Cool. Cheers, bud.